Hi, and welcome to You Can Too RV. Thanks for coming back if you're a subscriber, and if you're new to the channel, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about charge controllers, specifically solar charge controllers. You may have seen my last video about solar panels, and you can't utilize your solar panels without a charge controller. So we're going to talk about how does a charge controller work, and what are the different technologies, and which ones might be right for you. And at the end of the video, I'm going to even talk about what I use. When people start considering putting a solar system on their RV, one of their big concerns is, how will I integrate that with my current charging system? Well, the short answer is it doesn't, and it doesn't need to. Let's think about how a charger works. A charger puts voltage against your batteries. Any charger, even the alternator on your car, has a top limit, the highest voltage that it will push to your batteries. So each of these chargers has that same functionality. So if you had a solar charger and you're driving down the road and your engine alternator is charging your batteries, your solar charger is going to push voltage at them also. But the voltage is not going to get any higher because they're both working at the same time. So you're not going to overcharge your batteries. The same is true for your inverter charger or your converter or your DC to DC charger. They're going to work next to each other. They're not going to fight, and they're certainly not going to amplify the voltage and damage your batteries. Before we dive into the solar charge controllers, let's just talk about charge controllers in general. If you've been researching this, you've probably come across the term smart charger. What this refers to is a charger that runs through 3 phases to charge your batteries. Make sure that any charger you buy has the smart charger functionality. The smart charging capability is built into every solar charger that I've seen. Something else you want to look for is to make sure that this item you're buying is going to be forward compatible. Today you might have flooded lead acid batteries, but your next set of batteries you may want to upgrade to AGMs or even to lithiums as those continue to come down in price. You want to make sure that whatever you're investing in, you can use on batteries that you might buy in the future. So your smart charger should have some factory presets in it to allow it to work with the flooded lead acid or the absorbed glass mat or AGM batteries or gels, and even lithium. And I would really make sure that your lithium compatible, because the lithium batteries seem to keep coming down in price. I would also recommend that when you're choosing a charge controller, that you get one that allows you to tweak the settings, custom settings, because, lithium batteries haven't been around forever and now they're the norm, but there's different chemistries of lithium, and I think that's going to continue to evolve. So the lithium ion batteries of today may fall out of favor for a better technology in the future, and you're going to want the ability to adjust the absorption voltage and the float voltage and those kind of things to tailor them to your batteries. All right, so let's move into the solar charge controller. Your charge controller takes the power coming off of your solar panels and controls the volts that go to your battery. There's 2 popular technologies of charge controllers, and they both have their uses. The first is PWM, and the last is known as MPPT. So let's dive into those and see what the difference is. PWM, or pulse width modulation, is only going to take the first 13 or 14 volts that it needs to charge and not draw the rest of it out of the panel. Inside of the charge controller, it's using a switch turning on and off, and that's the pulse width in the name, to control what that voltage is and how much it's drawing from the panels. Now, these charge controllers range in efficiency from as low as 65% efficiency up to a high in the low 80s. They can't accept very high voltages. Most of them rated up to 20 volts, maybe 24 volts. And there are some that are rated a little bit higher if you're running a 24 volt battery system. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking about 12 volt systems. Probably the greatest benefit of a PWM is that it's very affordable. You can get these chargers, a 20 amp charger, for less than 20 bucks. And they go up more depending on features, brand names, etc. The other technology, MPPT, and that stands for multi-point power tracking. One big advantage of MPPT controllers is that they can accept higher voltage, and this allows you to use panels wired in series or even residential panels that put out higher voltages. Now, if you've got higher voltages, that means you've got lower amps running across the wires, which lets you use smaller diameter wires. It also helps to reduce the resistance loss that you'd have between your panels and your charge controller. Multi-point power tracking. Here's what it does for you. Throughout the day, your panels are going to be putting out different voltages. Certainly as the sun rises and falls through the day, your panels are going to have different exposure to sunlight. But as clouds drift by, as fog sets and burns off whatever it may be, your panel's output is going to change. So your charge controller will look at that and respond. And it does this continually throughout the day at a very rapid rate. And that's the multi-point power tracking. These are generally regarded to be about 95% efficient. Remember, the PWMs are down as low as 65 and are lucky to make it into the low 80s. So they're significantly more efficient. So to get the same charge going into your batteries, you would need fewer panels or smaller panels on an MPPT charge controller. What makes the MPPT so efficient is the fact that, assuming your batteries need a charge, that it's going to take all of the power from your panels. Your voltage will stay constant and the amps will rise and fall as the conditions on your solar panels change throughout the day. That's what makes an MPPT so efficient. Now, when you're shopping for an MPPT controller, you're going to see that it's rated in voltage and amps. Like you might see something like a 150/40. What that's going to talk about is the open circuit voltage coming from your panels. And we talked about that in the panel voltage. Then that's a rating that every manufacturer gives to you. So it might be something like 21.4 volts. So you take that and multiply that times the number of panels that you have wired in series. So it's really important that you calculate that and make sure that you have a charge controller that has a rating higher than the open circuit voltage of your solar panel system. Why doesn't everybody buy an MPPT controller if they're more efficient? Well, it comes down to money. They are quite a bit more expensive than a PWM. If you're putting in a very small system, and the only reason you're putting it in is so that when your motorhome is sitting parked in storage, you don't deplete your batteries. A PWM does fine for that. If you're out boondocking and you're trying to wring everything you can out of your panels, maybe you're even tilting your panels to get all of that, you want every bit of efficiency you can, and you're really relying on that solar charge controller to improve your camping experience. For that, I would go the MPPT. All right, when it comes to installing a solar charge controller, there's 4 primary wires that make the whole thing work. You've got a plus and minus coming in from your solar panels, and you've got a plus and minus going out to your batteries. And it's really that simple. The 2 wires going to your battery, you want to make sure that those are the heaviest gauge that you can fit into your charge controller, because you're at a lower voltage there and you're more susceptible to resistance loss. So whatever your charge controller will accept, use that gauge of wire. Be sure to use a fuse or circuit breaker according to the manufacturer of the charge controller's recommendations. You're going to have the 2 wires coming from the solar panels. Now, it's important to remember that you always connect to your battery first to energize your solar controller, and then you connect to your solar panels. In addition to those 4 wires, there could be a couple of other connections depending upon your charge controller. You want to mount this charge controller as close as you can to your batteries or to heavy cabling that goes to your batteries. But you never want to mount it in the battery compartment. All right, it's personal confession time. And I decided to buy a charge controller of the same brand as my solar panels. So it all arrived and I hooked it up. And when I connected this solar charge controller, the first thing I noticed is that it was making a loud squealing, ringing noise. Since it was directly below my bed, I didn't think that was going to be something I could tolerate. And this was in a no light condition that I was hooking this thing up. I can imagine how loud it would be during the day. And then it came with a remote Bluetooth module, which when I plugged it in, didn't work. So I contacted the company I bought it from, and I didn't want a replacement. I just wanted to get rid of it and get my money back, and I lost 20% on the deal. So I started researching solar charge controllers a bit more, and what I determined, even looking at photographs, were that some of these charge controllers sold by the panel companies were the same charger, just branded differently. So then I started hitting YouTube, kind of like you are now. And what I learned was the cool people all migrated towards a specific brand. Now, I'm not sponsored in any way, but I will admit that I've drank the Kool-Aid, and I like the Victron products. And one of the reasons I like them is if you've got multiple Victron products, they talk to each other. So they share functionality and information between themselves. So they've got a good Bluetooth app that lets you monitor what's going on with your devices and even control the settings. Let me know if you'd like me to do a demo on my charge controller, maybe show you the app functionality. That may be too boring for people to sit through, but if you're interested in that, I'd gladly do it. Thanks again for watching today, and hope you come back for the next video.